Hey, what's happening, good people? Welcome to Supreme Lord Commander. The new Supreme Lord Commander? I think I'm going to start rebooting Supreme Lord Commander. Uh, Kind of evolved on where it started, the idea of it, to where maybe it's going now, because as you've probably seen, it's been more or less a backup of my main channels over the past year or so. But it used to be more about breaking down the mind control through the media, like how the media uses the entertainment, the movies, and all those things to program the masses and all that. But I do so much of that on my main channel. So what I'm going to do here is kind of a start to a new sort of era of Supreme Lord Commander content, in which I'm just going to discuss things that are going to take a break from what I do on the main channel. So this is not, maybe I'll touch on some of the things that are going on, but we all do need to be able to get away from all the stress of what is going on. So I thought I would have a little bit of fun today with y'all and do my own personal list of the worst bands of all time. This is very personal, so it's whatever you're going to think, or whatever your sort of choices are going to be, are obviously going to be your own choices. You're probably going to agree with me on some of these, and then some of these ones that I'm going to put forth, maybe there'll be some controversy, right? But there'll be disagreements. Let's just say that. I'm probably going to call out, some of you people that are going to listen to this, probably some of the albums that you have in your collection, or bands that you like, or may have seen live, or think are even great, I may not like, so please don't take it personally. I will explain why I hate these bands and I hate their music, and so please don't be offended, because I have my own guilty pleasures. Like, for instance, there's many bands that I will listen to, and I wouldn't be proud if people knew, right? Or I'll give you an example, like the Bee Gees. Like I'm like a closet Bee Gees fan. I don't like all the Bee Gees, but I like some of their melodies and stuff like that. Even though there's a lot of cheesy stuff there. So that there are bands that I know that I like that people loathe. So this is the way it's gonna be. Period. Right, when we do this type of stuff. But I think that a lot of the stuff the bands that I will talk about, are universally hated, or a lot of people would share these opinions, maybe not for the same reasons, but nonetheless. And then there'll be some, of course, that will be my own. And the one thing about this list too, and it's not like a 1 to 20 or whatever like that, right? It's going to be totally random. But one thing about this list is that it's totally myself and my own experience. It's not like, what does Rolling Stones say, or what does, it has nothing to do with that. If I haven't heard horrible bands, and for many, many years now, I do not listen to the radio, and I haven't heard pop music in ages, so I really don't know what's popular now and what's awful now, but I imagine most of what's popular is awful. So if you don't hear the stuff that you hate so much over the past 10, 15 years, is because I don't even know it exists, probably. But anyways, let's just jump into it. Let's start off, and again, there's no ranking to this, and there's no kind of chronological order or anything like that. It's just gonna be, because I just made this total list out, and so I'm just gonna start off by talking. Where should I start? Let's start off with something obvious. Okay, so let's start off with a terrible band. It's called Nickelback. And it's Canadian corporate rock. It's as bland as you could possibly imagine. The lyrics are whack your head with a mallet 500 times a day idiocy. Like, it's so awful. It's just pure awful. I have friends that are diehard fans of Nickelback. Believe it or not. And there's no way anybody in the history of the world could convince me that Nickelback is worth listening to. Like, there's nothing that you could ever say or make me listen to them. Because I've had that. It's like, you gotta just listen to this song. Come on, Jeff, just listen to this one. Like, oh man. And if you have to do that with a band, that should tell you everything, right? If somebody is like so intent. But yeah, Nickelback, I think most people would probably agree, is one of the worst examples of contemporary corporate rock that has no soul, is regurgitated. Most of the songs sound the same. There's no real melody structure to anything. It's just awful corporate rock. And Chad Kroeger is... oh, yeah, he's quite a sight to see. You get sore eyes looking at him. Anyways, let's move on from that. Let's move to another really big, popular band. Super popular, super successful. Sold hundreds of millions. I don't know. Probably one of the top grossing bands in American history. And I absolutely loathe them. And they're called Bon Jovi. And I look at Bon Jovi as being rock and roll for people that hate rock and roll. Basically, it's like mock and roll or whatever. It's chick rock. Yeah, and there's some really good chick bands out there, and I don't really have, as far as I can tell on my list, I don't really have any female bands. So there you go, women. I'm not going after you guys, but Bon Jovi is basically rock and roll for girls who don't really understand or like rock and roll. That's the way I see it. And they're a bunch of pretty boys, and they had huge success because their music was radio friendly, but it was also soft rock friendly. And yeah, there's nothing I've ever heard from Bon Jovi that I even remotely thought was something I'd like to listen to that again, or hey, I'm gonna go buy that album. No chance. I loathe it every time I hear it. You know, even if it's Living on a Prayer or any of these, Bed of Nails. Oh, they're just excruciating songs to listen to. But they got the formula and they made the money, so there you go. So Bon Jovi, there you go, Bon Jovi. Now let's talk about a 90s band. It's 90s or 2000s that was particularly successful that I absolutely think are awful. They're called Smash Mouth. They had that, hey now, you're a rock star, get your gear on, go. That song was played to death. And that came out of the Shrek sort of era where they sold out and, got featured in your mind control movies sort of thing. And yeah, it's just an awful, awful band. Awful songs. And I hate their attitude and their faces, and I hate the lead singer with a passion, and I just can't stand them. Smash Mouth are awful, sellout, corporate garbage music. So, and I'm crossing these out on my list as I go forward here. Let's talk about another one here from Rainbow Unicorn Land, because the first one was that I mentioned was Nickel Crab. Okay, so we've got some other terrible ones here. Crash Test Dummies. You guys ever heard of Crash Test? They were pretty big and successful back in the 90s, 2000. I don't know, around that era. It's foggy for me. But yeah. The Superman song too. My roommate at the time got the album and was playing it. I was like, what are you listening to? What happened to you? Did you fall out of the bus and hit your head on the road or something on the way home from school? I just hated it instantly, and I can't stand that band. And I can't, I know why. I think a lot of these bands are successful because our controllers like to torture us. But yeah, that's one of those bands that as soon as I hear it, I want to hit the exit as quickly as possible. Or I don't want to hear your music ever, sort of thing. So Crash Test Dummies. Let's move on here. Oasis. Yeah, you talk about really successful bands that are out there that I guess had a bunch of hits. And there's absolutely not one song from Oasis that I like. There's not one song that I would say, that's a good song, actually. I think Oasis is possibly the most overrated band ever. And they have an extremely high opinion of themselves because they would compare themselves to the Beatles, which is, I don't know. It's got to be the silliest thing ever, right? It's like a, it's like a somebody's thrown away freaking cheeseburger trying to pair their meal to cordon bleu or 5-star Michelin guide restaurant type of thing. Yeah, I absolutely hate Oasis. I hate the brothers, Noel and whatever the other one is. I hate them. I can't stand their faces. I can't stand their music. I hate that era of rock and roll. I think it's pretty awful. I think that's, honestly, I think bands like Oasis helped kill rock and roll. And I don't think rock and roll is completely dead. It'll never really die fully. Well, maybe we all will first, but I don't necessarily think that rock and roll is dead, because I don't think you can kill a style of music. It just is no longer being used by our controllers to program us. And I think, but a lot of these bands like Oasis, U2, even Genesis, later Genesis and stuff like that, really helped kill rock and roll, because they destroyed the spirit of rock and roll, which is supposed to be good times, fun, girls, cars, or just like having fun, like sexual sort of male energy for the most part. That's why rock and roll is kind of male music. It's not that women can't do it and women can't do it well, but it is kind of a testosterone sort of thing. So good rock and roll bands really channel that male energy, and that's why the guitar is really the predominant instrument of rock and roll music. But yeah, Oasis are just like one of those bands I can't stand. I hate everything about them. I hate the way they look. I hate their egos. I hate their faces. And yeah, I hate their music. And maybe you're a fan. Maybe somewhere there's a decent song. I don't know. I haven't heard it. But now let's talk about one of the bands. Oh, I got to talk about this band. Some bands, like when you have say you have friends, like I said this before, when a friend says, you got to listen to this, So I had a really cool friend who listened to the best music ever, just funnest guy you would ever meet, ever. Just a wild party, right? 3-ring circus party everywhere you went, sort of thing. And we used to listen to the coolest frickin' music, like blues, jazz, all these, really cool stuff that we were into, and we'd share everything. And then he started going out with this girl, and he changed, like, and that happens, right? It happens. But he changed, and his music, he got rid of all his music that we used to listen to, rock and roll, blues, jazz, all that stuff, all the good stuff. And then he said, Jeff, you got to listen to this band. And he put it on, and I was just like, are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? And the band was called the Dave Matthews Band. And he's trying to convince me. He's like, Jeff, man, this is just great music. And, like all the times that we would get together and listen to all this amazing music, you never had to say, you got to listen to this, or, like, this is a great band, just listen to it, trust me, it's great, like, you just put on the music and it would speak for itself. And I remember being subjected to Dave Matthews Band, and I was just like, what is this crap? Like, what is this? This is like the blandest, most awful, soulless music I've ever heard in my life. Like, what's the purpose of this? Who listens to this music? So I don't know. I know probably some of my listeners are Dave Matthews Band fans, and I know there's probably something that I just don't get with their music. I just don't like it at all. I just feel like it has no soul. It has no melody. It's whiny. It's pretentious. It's just bad. I'm just gonna say it. I'm sorry if you're being insulted by this, but yeah, I do not like Dave Matthews Band at all. Three Doors Down. You guys ever heard that? There's a whole bunch of bands from a certain era that I was subjected to when I was younger and I was working, stocking shelves, and I would work these jobs, and I would have to listen to the radio all day. And one of them was Three Doors Down, and they had this song called Kryptonite, and I can't even begin to describe how awful the song is. If you've ever heard it, you can sympathize with me because it is just awful. I hate any song about Superman. I hate Superman. I absolutely detest Superman. I hate everything about Superman. I just can't stand. I generally hate superheroes, period, because it's all part of our control, right? Our mind control. But yeah, any song about Superman, like the aforementioned, Superman didn't make much money. The Crash Test, I don't even remember the lyrics, but I kind of remember little segments of it. But yeah, Three Doors Down was one of those bands that would come on the radio and like several times. Like you say you work in an 8-hour shift and you'd have to hear them over and over and over again. Here's a song by Three Doors Down called Kryptonite. And I just, and there's nothing you could do because you'd be working at this place and they would just play this. So it was torture. It was pure torture, pure torture. Now, when we talk about pure torture, probably some of the worst torture that I've ever had listening to anything. Probably one of the worst bands I've ever heard in my life, without any doubt, is something called Creed. And that was one of those bands that I was subjected to. And I swear to God, it would seem like they would play Arms Wide Open once an hour on this radio station where I worked. And they would just loop it. Here's Creed with Arms Wide Open. And I honestly had visions of myself, what I would do to the lead singer of Creed. I don't know his name, but I was thinking, like, how would you do it if you could get to him? Because he's hurt you so much. Like, their music has made you suffer so much. So what would I do? And I thought about, would I choke him, or would I gouge his eyeballs out? Would I what do they call it? Curb stomp? Yeah. They'd be like, no, that's too quick. No, he would have to be made to suffer. He would have to, maybe I would sing the song to him while I slowly, I can't say this stuff on air. I'm only joking, YouTube community, of course. You know that, right? I wouldn't hurt anybody, but except the lead singer of Creed, of course. Yeah, Creed is a special type of awful, and that type of music that was around at that point in time, that's, you think about it, rock and roll was so awful. That's not even close to rock and roll. Now, you could blame maybe the 70s where, you had the soft rock sort of era that came forth, and all of that carried over through the 80s and 90s. But yeah, the 90s, early 2000s, the type of rock and roll that was coming, what they would call rock and roll, was the antithesis of what real rock and roll is. Like, you think of Creedence Clearwater Revival, or you think the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, and then you got Creed. Three Doors Down. Oh, how about this one? Counting Crows. My word. I just couldn't stand, like, hearing the music first and foremost, which is like suicide music. I guess that's music you listen to if you want to kill yourself. And I couldn't stand the look of this lead singer. I didn't know what he was trying to be. It's like, did he have dreads or something? He had things tied in his hair. He's just a mopey, dopey looking douchebag from hell. And it's like, why would I listen to somebody that looks like that? Well, and I don't know because I've only heard a few songs, but yeah, I didn't like any of them. How about this one, though, or right around from the same time, Hootie and the Blowfish. Yeah, Hootie and the Blowfish. I think if you have that name, because like a name like Hootie and the Blowfish, I just say, like right away, you see the name, you're going to hate it. Like, I know instantly when I see something called Hootie and the Blowfish or something like that, I know I'm going to hate them. Like, I know right away. You can't make a name that's that gay and actually be good at something, right? It's almost, you shouldn't judge a book by the cover, but yeah, kind of judging a band by its name, sometimes it works. And Hootie and the Blowfish were one of these one-hit wonder. I don't know, did they have more than one hit that they used to play to death? There was another one called Spin Doctors. There was a bunch of them at that point. There's always been a bunch of one-hit wonders. Spin Doctors, they played to death when I was younger, one of the most overplayed albums of the 90s. But yeah, Hootie and the Blowfish definitely deserve their place there. How about this? Another Rainbow Unicorn Land band that's called Our Lady Peace. I don't know if you've ever heard Our Lady Peace. It's got this whiny, pretentious douchebag from hell as a lead singer, and they're just awful. I mean, they're just awful. They're like a Pearl Jam wannabe. And that's saying something, right? It's pretty bad if you're trying to be Pearl Jam or something. But yeah, Our Lady Peace. And there was another one in Rainbow Unicorn Land that was called Moist. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that band. They were just, they played this stuff on the radio, and it was like, what are you trying to do? You want people to, like honestly, if you were to hear Moist or Three Doors Down or Counting Crows or Our Lady Peace or Nickelback or, like any of these bands, if you were to hear what they played on the radio, are they trying to get people to kill themselves? Because it almost seems like, yeah, they are. Like, let's just play the worst possible stuff that we could possibly imagine. The most soul-sucking, depressing, juvenile, idiotic, just unmusical crap. And Moist was one of those bands that we got subjected to here in Rainbow Unicorn Land. Now, let's get a bigger one, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, that I think this one's probably kind of universal. I think a lot of people would agree with me on this one, and for good reason. But I'll shoot the name out there. Limp Bizkit. Yeah, Limp Bizkit. Remember the guy with the red hat? Fred, I think his name is Fred Durst. My word. You just wish something would happen, like, a bolt of lightning or something, like during one of these live shows. Spare humanity. They did it all for the nookie. MTV has always been awful, and MTV, and people have this notion, remember when MTV was great and all that? Well, MTV's first song was Video Killed the Radio Star. That should have given you a clue about where they were taking music. And the reason why they do that, Video Killed the Radio Star, was because in the past, your looks really didn't matter. Were you a good singer? Did you make a good song? Right? There's a lot of very successful artists from the 60s and 70s that were not lookers. They weren't. Lionel Richie. Not that that's good music or anything. Some of the stuff is okay. Gordon Lightfoot. I'm just thinking of some of these people off the top of my head. Burton Cummins, not exactly lookers, but they were good singers, good performers, and then Video Killed the Radio Star, and then it was all up to the looks and what they could sell. But yeah, Limp Bizkit were one of those bands that MTV darlings that they played to death, and they subjected a whole generation to. And yeah, if I'm not mistaken, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't a lot of their concerts lead to like really violent acts and rapes and stuff like that? I don't know if it was Woodstock where they were playing, where people started burning everything down. Maybe they just realized this music is horrible. Or maybe the music is so bad and it's purposely made, so it's made to drive people into a state of anger and burn things up. I don't know. It's just awful. But yeah, Limp Bizkit, I definitely believe deserve a place here. And I mentioned a group before that is very popular. I'm sure some of my listeners are not going to like this one. And I'll admit, I have 3 albums, I think, by them. And some of these bands I do have albums by. Actually, probably none of the ones that I've mentioned thus far. Let me see. I did have the Two Princes, Spin Doctors. I did have that album. I'm sorry, I hate to admit it. But yeah, no, I didn't have any of these other ones. But what was the band I was going to mention, which is one of the darlings of the grunge era? So the grunge era that was supposed to be a revitalization of rock and roll, in the early 90s, early mid 90s kind of era there, where you had Nirvana and you had Alice in Chains. You had all these bands coming out of Seattle, but there was one called Pearl Jam. So Pearl Jam is one of these bands. They had a really good first album, even though it's totally overrated and way overplayed. These songs were they were just all over the radio, nonstop. So you kind of wonder, right? Usually when they do that, there's a reason for it. It's interesting when I think about their song Jeremy with the video, and it was all about a kid that goes crazy and shoots up his class. You wonder what that was about. And that Eddie Vedder is this major sort of gun control advocate, and he works for the United Nations. It just seemed like Pearl Jam were one of those bands that got too good or too big for their own good. They would have been much better if they were kept hungry and more like their first album, right, where they were more into the music and not perverted by all the the things that you get with success, because sometimes success can ruin bands, often. And I'll mention another band in the same sentence, or the same sentence, at the same time, that I believe success completely destroyed. So Pearl Jam being one of them, U2 is another example. I think U2 were great up until the Joshua Tree. I think the Joshua Tree was when they sold their soul to the devil. And even though you could say the Joshua Tree had, was their biggest album, probably, I don't know, had all these big hits on it, The Streets Have No Names and With or Without You and stuff like that. But I just hated that album. I liked their older stuff, that was more rebellious and raw and punkish and underground sounding, and that you could feel the hunger in the band sort of thing. But yeah, once they became the biggest band in the world, they sucked forevermore kind of thing. Even though, yeah, you can say they had some big hits and stuff like that. And I've seen U2, three times, I think, live, because, girlfriends. But yeah. So I would put U2 right there with Pearl Jam as that type of example of once a band that had potential, was putting out some pretty good stuff, and then they became super successful. And then another one I'll put right up there with them, because they deserve to be mentioned, is another band that I thoroughly dislike. It's called Coldplay. And I had their first album, so, which I'll never listen to, ever. But before they became, one of the biggest bands in the world, yeah, they're just one of those bands that I believe are here to torture us. That they and I know some people will like them, and some people will, they say that they have some great songs, and they're not terrible and all that. And you're probably right. It's not like they can't sing or play, but it's just the type of music that I think is anti sort of rock and roll, and really helped kill rock and roll in many ways. But yeah, I do not like Coldplay at all. And so, yeah, I kind of put them there with Pearl Jam and U2 as what happens to a band that, these bands, they don't realize that success could be the worst thing for them. Even though, yeah, you could say technically, no, they've done super well, and all that. It's just their music is just, it just becomes corporate sort of nauseating, self-indulgent gibberish, it's just, and it all sounds the same. It's like you hear it and you just, not Coldplay again. All right, so yeah, and any other bands that I need to mention within that group, just checking here quickly at my trusty list. And you know what, I'll mention a band from that era, the closer to the grunge era, that I thoroughly never liked. And this one might be controversial as well, because people I'm sure a lot of people like these guys because they're kind of underground darlings, but they became hugely successful. And that's the Smashing Pumpkins. I've always loathed the Smashing Pumpkins, and mostly because I absolutely abhor. I detest the lead singer. I think he's one of the worst lead singers I've ever heard. He should never be singing. He's a terrible singer, like just flat out awful. And sometimes it can work. There are some bands that have weak lead singers, but because they know they're weak and they don't try to, or they just, it works with the music. Bob Dylan is a good example of I wouldn't say he's a weak singer, but he's not a good singer, or he could be at times. He's deceptively better than he sounds, but maybe that's not the best example. Of the guy for the Flaming Lips, for example, he's Wayne Coyne. I think he's an example of a weak lead singer, but he's not pretentious at all, or at least maybe that's not correct, but at least his music or their music comes across as more sincere and more underground. It's not like they're trying to make the next Achtung Baby or something, right? Anyways, I do not like Smashing Pumpkins, and that's a personal thing, and I really detest the lead singer, and I hate his whiny voice, and I don't like his face. It's just a personal thing, so I don't know if you like them, because that's probably one of the bands that would be more controversial on this list. Not as obvious, all right, so we need to get to some of the more obvious ones. Now, here's another one from that era that I thoroughly dislike, and I've always hated. I could say I really hate these guys. And I know this is another one that people might say, oh, I like them, or no, they had some good songs, or no, their first couple albums were really great. And I would thoroughly disagree. And I absolutely loathe this band. I've never heard anything by them that I even remotely liked. And I've tried to give them a chance, too. And that is Green Day. I hate Green Day. I hate their music. I hate the bratty faux punk music is what I would call it, because I feel like punk music has to be coming raw. Like I listened to a lot of punk music when I was a kid, and for me, punk rock music is a way of life. It's, Sex Pistols, say The Clash, or these people would say The Clash kind of popularized punk rock. But you listen to early Clash, for instance, the Ramones, a lot of bands where it's just like, we're going to play 3-chord rock. We don't give a crap. We're not trying to be super awesome. This is just what we can do, and we're just going to play it. And we don't give an F-U-C-K. And I feel like that's the spirit of punk rock. You just don't care. You don't care about how you look. You don't care about how you dress. You don't even care about how your music. And even you'd show up and do a show, and there's no frills. It's just and I've been to a ton of punk shows and been on all these mosh pits and all this stuff, and I know what punk rock is, and I think that Green Day is like just corporate punk. And there's a lot of bands, NoFX. There's a lot of other bands around that time, I guess, that came out and had that similar type thing where they were promoted, they were hugely successful, and they were using punk. Now, like, I'll give you an example. So if you're a Green Day fan, you might know that their favorite, or the band that influenced them the most is Husker Du. And I'm a huge Husker Du fan. So I think Husker Du is probably the best punk rock band of all time, or one of them for sure, American punk rock band. And they masterfully took that. They were ahead of their time. They never had huge success. They never weren't anywhere near the charts or anything like that. But because they were a working band, they never had that huge success. They never got perverted by success. They never were, they had to work hard, and they had to build up their grassroots sort of audience sort of thing. And so that works well, because the music that you make is authentic. It comes from the heart. It's not like we're trying to make a hit single. type of thing. I think bands like Husker Du thought there's no chance we're ever going to be on the radio, so we'll just play it, the way that we feel it, sort of thing. And that's why it's so refreshing. Even you can put on a Husker Du album today and really enjoy it. And like they're very strong melodies, and there's a lot of. So conversely, I see that ironically that Green Day is super successful, and they even admit it that they ripped off all their songs from Husker Du or whatever. They ripped off a lot of their stuff, but they're, to me, the opposite in many ways. And I just don't like the band. I don't like the songs. I've never liked any of their songs. And also, how can it be anti-establishment when first you're called Green Day with, Green Revolution, the Agenda 2030 and all that happening, but also that you're being promoted massively and you're headlining, major festivals, and you're one of the biggest acts in the world. You're promoted all over the media. You're on the cover of Rolling Stone and all these things. That's kind of like the opposite of being a punk rocker. The punk rocker is supposed to be anti-establishment and just, on the streets kind of thing. Just struggling to get by, sort of thing, and just doing it your way and not giving into the corporate sort of thing. So yeah, Green Day is one of those bands that a popular band that I know a lot of people like, that I've never ever liked. I've never heard one song that I was like, that's actually a good song. Never. And I can be very forgiving when it comes to music, or that's not the way to put it. I'm very honest when it comes to music. Like if I thought, say, Green Day had some good songs, and maybe they do, I just never heard it. But if I did, I would come out and say, yeah, actually, that's a pretty cool song, or that's a good album. I'll admit that's a good album, right, or something like that. And I've never listened fully to a Green Day album, but I'll tell you, there's not one of their songs, their hit songs, that I remotely resonate with. I just hate them. As soon as I hear them, I just want to shut it off. And I'm someone who loves punk rock music, who grew up with punk rock music. So what does that say? Anyways, take it or leave it. I know some people are going to not like that one. And then, okay, so getting through the list is pretty cool. Let's talk about another band from that era, which I hate. I hate it from the instant I heard them. Weezer. I hate the name. I hate the look of the band. I hate the sound of the band. I hated the Buddy Holly song. I hated the song. It was just so overplayed. And yeah, and the Mary Tyler Moore, and I don't care. I just hate the monotonous sound of. I just hate Weezer. I can't stand them. I mean, is it possible they have some stuff that I might find okay? Maybe, yeah. But from their hit songs, I never liked anything that came out, and I can't stand them. So, all right, let's get closer to home here for a second. My word, when I talk about hate, like just pure hate, like with such utter passion. If I just see the band, and this band is from Montreal, and they were played to death, and they were everywhere, and every single day in the newspaper, everywhere you looked, they were promoting this band, and they're one of the worst bands I've ever heard in my life. They're called A Simple Plan. Have you ever had to hear this band of a bunch of beta male douchebags from hell who couldn't write a good song if their lives depended on it? And I hate that bald ass, I don't know if he's the guitarist or the drummer. I can't stand these people. I hate the way they look. I mean, the lead singer looks like Shirley DeFranco. They're just awful. They're just terrible. There's nobody that could disagree with me. I don't know how anybody could like a band like Simple Plan. Just horrible, terrible stuff. Also, did I mention Blink 182? I probably didn't. I had them on my list here, but I should have mentioned them with the other bands there. Did they have one hit? What an awful band. Blink 182. I hate the name. I hate the lead singer guy who now is all into Project Bluebeam, and he goes on Joe Rogan and he pushes all this alien crap. Tom DeLonge, is that his name? I think that's the lead. If I got it wrong, forgive me. These bands are so awful, But Blink-182 is just an awful band. You know, it's a one-hit wonder from that era of we're going to kill rock and roll, basically, by putting a bunch of douchebags up on stage, forcing you to listen to their crap all the time. But yeah, Blink-182 deserves to be mentioned there. All right. Let's get to some of the bigger ones here that I haven't yet mentioned. I need to talk about hair bands for a second here because I really hate hair bands. So the late 80s, early 90s was the era of hair bands. And you could say, you know, there's a lot of programming that goes into that. There's the blending, the blurring of the lines, the New World Order, the satanic music industry promoting men looking like women sort of thing. But you had all these bands like Cinderella, Rat, Warrant, and the one that deserves to be singled out here in particular are Poison. And they are one of the most hated bands in rock and roll history because they're just awful. Everything about them is awful. Unskinny Bop, one of the worst songs I've ever heard, and it also it's one of those terrible songs that gets in your head and you can't get it out, sort of thing. But yeah, the hair bands, I hated all of them. I'm trying to think, is there any hair band that was half decent? Probably, maybe, I don't know. You could say maybe Guns N' Roses. They're more rock and roll. And I would say with Guns N' Roses, because I know some people would say Guns N' Roses deserve to be on this list. And I would say Appetite for Destruction is an amazing hard rock and roll album. So I'm not going to put them on this list, even though I do not like anything that has come out since. So I'm like one of those guys, I like the old rock and roll. I did not like Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I did not, and anything else. I mean, they've just been a complete freak show or basket case sort of, you know. I mean, it's amazing, Guns N' Roses, how little they've put out in their career and how much money they've made from gouging fans and, you know, and all that. But anyways, Guns N' Roses doesn't deserve to be here because of how good their first album was, and there's no question it's one of the best rock and roll albums of all time. So I'm not putting them here, but I would say later Guns N' Roses, yeah, for sure, they would deserve to be here. But yeah, what was the band I was just talking about? Oh, the hair bands, yeah, the hair bands, all of them, they're just awful. Motley Crue is another one. Motley Crue, wow, you just wonder, you know, but you know, why are they successful? Well, the music industry is satanic. That's why. They're evil, and they'll promote things that will hurt your kids. And Motley Crue and all the hair bands, Poison, Rat, Warrant, all these awful bands deserve to be there. Another band from the 80s that I cannot stand, mostly because of their biggest song, which was played to death and has been played to death forever, is Quiet Riot. It's a dumb name anyways, Quiet Riot, but Quiet Riot and the song their biggest song ever, Come On Feel, I hate that song. I freaking hate that song. That is a song, though, that is more of a chick song. Right? It really is. It's for beta males and stuff like that, right? There a lot of 80s rock and roll ballads were, you know, that in that vein, right? Targeting more the, or and also you could say programming people with the weakness and stuff. But yeah, Come On Feel the Noise, I think is one of those songs I can't stand. It's been played to death, and every time I hear it, I just grit my teeth. I just come on, feel the noise, girls, rock your boys, we'll get wild. And I do like some of the 80s style, you know, cheesy rock stuff, you know, Twisted Sister, stuff like that. It can be fun, you know. But yeah, that song, nah. I don't know if they deserve to be here, though, so I'm not going to include them, but I just mentioned that song. And where are we here? Let's talk about one of the bands I think are the biggest posers of all time. Now, this one's going to be one of the more controversial ones, because I know there's a lot of diehard fans and there's a lot of people that like this band, but I wonder how many people would agree with me. And that is Kiss. And Kiss, I'll admit, I like some of their songs. Some of their songs I like, right? There's some I wanna rock and roll all night. It's a great rock and roll song. I'll admit that. They've got some cool songs. I think they were mostly crap, though. I think for the most part, they put out absolute crap. I think that Kiss, the irony of Kiss, too, is that they only made it when they put on the makeup, or that's how they made it, right? Because, you know, the two guys that run the band there, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley of a certain tribe, they understood, like, they Kiss, to me, is the prototype, or they are the greatest fake band in rock history, like in the sense that they and really they are the marketing sort of, I mean it is marketing. Like Gene Simmons, who really is responsible for it, you know, would make money off anything, right? If he could sell his grandmother for $1, he would, sort of thing. So like Kiss in the 1970s, that's where they became an enterprise. So they sold action figures, they sold, you know, snow globes and freaking like t-shirts. Well, everyone sells t-shirts, but you know, like everything, you know, like freaking toy sets and you know, freaking birthday party plates and whatnot, right? I mean, just anything you could stick Kiss on, Gene Simmons would make sure that they stick their name and their label. And yeah, are they horribly satanic? Some of their lyrics too, if you look at some of their early songs, they're really disgusting. Like there's some and it doesn't surprise me, you know, you look at Gene Simmons, it doesn't surprise me. And again, I don't necessarily hate Kiss, as I do like some of their songs. So this is one of those bands that's rare on this list where I say there are some songs by Kiss that I actually like. You can call them guilty pleasures and stuff like that. Whereas most of these bands, I don't like anything by them. So I'll give Kiss at least that. But yeah, I think Kiss are one of the biggest, most pretentious bands of all time. And one of the things that one of my guilty pleasures to pick up my mood sometimes when I'm feeling, I don't even picking up my mood. When I want to have a good laugh, I'll put on Lick It Up. I think it's called Lick It Up. You can see this on YouTube. And it's the most hilarious thing. It's when Kiss took off the makeup. I don't know whenabouts that was, sometime in the 80s or something. And they're like, we're gonna go serious now. We're gonna take off the makeup. And the video is so funny. Like the music is so gay, but the video is so funny because they look like a freak show. Like you see them walking and they're dressed like they're like, I don't know, they're like dressed like Jewish hookers or something, right? They look so cheesy. And Gene Simmons is so incredibly ugly, and they're trying to look sexy. And they got their new guitarist, they replaced Ace Frehley with this guy who looks like a girl, and they look like clowns. It's so hilarious. So I have to admit, I'll put that on every now and then. It's only if I'm going to watch it, because I'm not going to listen to the horrible song. But if I want to get a good laugh, Lick It Up by Kiss, which again, I mean, it kind of lick it up, you know, you can get the mentality of the music, you know, because it's undoubtedly a sexual sort of connotation, you know. It's just really low. It's something it come out of Gene Simmons' mind, right? And I hate Gene Simmons. I absolutely hate the guy. I can't stand listening to him. He's so full of himself. So yeah, they deserve to be mentioned here, although I'll give them the caveat that they do have some decent songs. And if I was forced to listen to Kiss, I would say give me the first few albums, sort of thing. I don't want to listen to anything else. Another one that I've never liked at all, and mostly, and I don't like the music. I don't understand, like I understand what they're trying to do, but I hate the character. I just don't like him, period, is Kid Rock. That sort of country, southern rock meets rap type of crap just doesn't work, or he doesn't pull it off well. I just hate his face. He's got a rat face. Can't stand him. I never heard anything by him that I would be like, yeah, I want to listen to that. Yeah, put that Kid Rock song on. No, I can't stand Kid Rock, and I hate his rat face, and I do not like... I'm not saying that couldn't be pulled off by other people, because there are bands that mix successfully, Jurassic 5, people like that, mix different genres of music together, and they come up with a really cool sound, but yeah, not Kid Rock. Ironically, Kid Rock, one thing that I remember of Kid Rock is there's a video, one of his most popular videos, where he's wiping his ass with toilet paper that says Radiohead on it. So he's wiping his ass with Radiohead. And I find that interesting too, because Radiohead, I'm not putting Radiohead on here, so calm down if you're a Radiohead fan. But I'll say this about Radiohead, because I do have Radiohead on my MP3 players. I have an MP3 player that has a gargantuan amount of music. And Radiohead's one of those bands that I either love what I hear or I absolutely hate it with a passion. Sometimes some of their songs are really great, and I'll be like, yeah, that's an awesome song. And then some of their songs with Tom York just, it's just awful. Awful. But because I like some of their music, I'm not putting them on the list. But I do find it interesting that Kid Rock was making a statement about that. Another one I think that'll be more universal here, that I'm sure that most people would agree with me, and somebody that has no talent, has never made anything worth listening to. I've never heard anything remotely. It's like nails on a chalkboard, and he's so grotesque to look at. He's just such a freak, and he's satanic, and he's an evil piece of shit. I've probably sworn many times here, but whatever. And that is Marilyn Manson. MM33, just a hideous, satanic douchebag from hell, and just awful music, excruciating, just painful. There's nothing there to listen to, Damn, I mean, I can even admit some ABBA songs are half decent, but I'm never going to admit anything by Marilyn Manson is ever going to be worth listening to. It's an exercise of torture, and I think that's purposeful. Another band from that era that I do not like, I can't stand, is No Doubt. And I particularly hate I think it's the bassist. I can't stand his face. I just can't stand them. And I hate the Hollerback girl too, even though I think she's a good singer. I just hate their music. And they were played to death during their time as well. So yeah, definitely not a fan of No Doubt. Where are we here? Oh yeah, there's another band that I haven't mentioned, and I really don't know a lot, but I really despise the leader of the band, so I put them here, which is White Zombie with Rob Zombie. I just think he's a wretched creature. I can't stand him. And I think from what I've heard of their music, I really didn't like it at all. And I wonder if White Zombie is somewhat of a psyop on Southern white people, because I saw the Halloween movies that Rob Zombie made, and I'm like, who would make movies with families like that? Are there families are there families that are that wretched, and they're white families, and like, if you've seen the remakes, because the remakes just are awful. For one, they're over the top. I mean, some people say, oh, there's some good scenes, or there's, some of it's well filmed. Yeah, whatever. But, the depiction of the white trash in Rob Zombie's films is quite stunning. And you wonder if that's not part of a psyop of our controllers, in which the theme, White Zombie, if you think about it, who are the white zombies? Who are the Walking Dead? Well, so the majority of white people that they have dumbed down and programmed into degeneracy and just complacency and idiocy and all that, those are the white zombies. So I wonder about Rob Zombie, what his real purpose is. But yeah, I put them on here. All right, and then we have just a few more here, so we're almost through. I'm going to take a moment to mention some of the 70s bands here that I think are would be okay. So a band called Foreigner, for instance, and you could come in and you can argue Foreigner. Like, you could say, yeah, but the lyric or the singing's good, or they had some catchy songs, urgent, things like. But I just hate Foreigner. I would never be, man, put on that Foreigner song. No, never. And I'll admit, if there's like even Journey, and there are some of those bands that I think have some good songs, or some, they're not horrible. And you could say also those bands from the 70s, they could all play and they could all sing, and You couldn't fake it. Video killed the radio stars. So back then, at least these bands, even though they were cheesy corporate rock, and I think Foreigner is what basically what Nickelback thinks they are when they look in the mirror and they're saying we're Foreigner, but even wanting to be Foreigner is kind of bad. So I would put Foreigner in that realm. I would put a whole bunch of other 70s rock bands that just lost all sort of rock and roll spirit and just became, like people. And again, one of the bands that I know a lot of people would want and probably screaming for me to mention would be the Eagles. Right? Like the Big Lebowski, not the effing Eagles, man. And I would say, yeah, because they were so overplayed. I think the problem with the Eagles is they actually have quite a few good songs. They actually do. I like their songs. They're very melodic, or some of them, right? The problem is that they were played to death, and there's a lot of bands that happens with, and it's played to death. It's like AC/DC, for instance. You Shook Me All Night Long. I never want to hear the song again, ever. And it is a good song. It's a great rock and roll song, but I never want to hear it again because I've heard it 8 million times, and everywhere I go, you hear it. Another one is Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. Yeah, it's a great song, sure, but I never ever want to hear it ever again. I've heard it 8 billion times, and if I hear it again, somebody will die, kind of thing. So some music just gets so overplayed. Pink Floyd, right? Dark Side of the Moon. The most overplayed album in the history of humanity would be Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. And is it a great album? Yeah, it's a great album, right? But it's so overplayed that I never want to hear it again, ever. I'll reach for Piper at the Gates Dawn or Metal or any freaking Pink Floyd album over that, and The Wall as well, because they're just so overplayed. Or none of the newer stuff, of course, just awful. But yeah, that's what happens sometimes. So I think with the Eagles, that's kind of the case, because they were talented. They could sing, they could write, they could play guitar. It's not like they're a bunch of posers. They're not nickel crap. They wrote some pretty good ballads. Their songs are, their melodies are very strong. So, I wouldn't put the Eagles there. And I would say I'd be embarrassed to admit that I like some of the Eagles, but I wouldn't put them there because of that reason. But yeah, most of these other bands, yeah, they definitely deserve to be here. Another one I didn't mention from Rainbow Unicorn Land that I absolutely detest, and there's a lot of bands from Rainbow Unicorn Land that I detest, but this one in particular, they're called the Barenaked Ladies. And they're just awful, awful, awful. I can't stand the look of them. I can't stand the sound of them. I just hate them. And I hated them from day one. And they're one of those bands that you wonder about their success because they got a lot of press up here in Canada. Nobody knew who they were, but for some reason they were banned from playing at some place because of their name. Somebody found their name, and that became an international sort of headline. Oh, this band in Toronto is banned, and that's how they got successful. So I wonder how that happens. I wonder, about the members of the band, but they're just awful. Can't stand them. Kind of reminds me of Smash Mouth, just really annoying, awful band. They got in some big movies and had some quote-unquote big hits, but just really disgusting. I can't stand looking at them, can't stand listening to them. Yeah, they deserve to be mentioned here. And then, what else have we got? Oh, yeah, we've got a few obvious ones here. We're right down. I can't believe I got through all this. Black Eyed Peas. Is there anybody that likes Black Eyed Peas? If you like the Black Eyed Peas, you probably should stop getting lobotomies. I mean, how does anybody like My Humps, for instance? Like seriously. If you like the Black Eyed Peas, probably I'm not going to want to talk to you. I'd be like, yeah, okay, have a nice day. Yeah, I don't know. The Black Eyed Peas, Will.i.am. I hate these people. I hate their faces. I hate everything about them. I hate their music with an utter passion. And they are the biggest sellouts and just one of the worst bands of all time, without any question. They deserve to be here in this list. Another one that I think is one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. In my life, when I think about And I mentioned some of the bands. I said Arms Wide Open by Creed. I said the Three Doors Down, Kryptonite, right? There's just these horrible Our Lady Peace, Moist. These just awful, these bands that why is anybody listening? Why is this on the radio? Why do they want to hurt us? Like why? Well, one of the worst bands I've ever heard in my life that is so nauseating, so awful, and yet so popular were Matchbox 20. I don't even know what to say. Like, the hate is not a strong enough word for what I feel about Matchbox 20. I loathe Matchbox 20. And I'd probably loathe you if you like them. Anyways, yeah, they needed to be mentioned here. Obviously, some of the more contemporary bands that are just awful. BTS, Burn It With Fire is what I say. I think if you see BTS, you just want to get the flamethrowers out. You just want to scorch the earth. You want to make sure nothing remains when you see BTS. When you see what they've done, are those boys? Are they girls that are... I mean, like, what are they, right? Of course. But what is the music, of course? And if people like this music, it's like, if you like Hanson, for instance. I didn't even put Hanson on here, or... some of those one-hit wonder, awful, horrible bands, because they're I don't even think they're worth mentioning. But if you like that stuff, you're like, okay, Backstreet Boys. I mean, like, seriously, if you like the Backstreet Boys, my word, I don't know what to do for you. Like, seriously, I can't help you. You should just take a long walk on a short pier, because you have no taste in anything, right? But I didn't even mention those bands because those are bands that I never hear, I never have to listen to. Justin Bieber's another one. Of course, Justin Bieber is an awful, hideous, terrible hack shill from hell, who never deserves any success or anybody listening. Nobody should be listening to him. Not even his own mother should be listening. That's how bad he is. But I didn't mention him in this list because I think it's pretty obvious, right? And but yeah, BTS, Burn It With Fire. As soon as you see it, just burn it. If you see it, burn it with fire, and then make sure, scorched earth kind of thing. Make sure there's nothing that remains, because that type of it's just awful. And I swear to God, there's not a day that goes by where I don't see BTS, because every time I click on Twitter, BTS is trending. Every time YouTube, BTS, all the time. All over the media, all the time, BTS, and they need to be burned with fire, YouTube community. And then scorched earth, and I don't even know. I mean, like, you'd have to use chemicals, all these things. You have to make sure there's no trace of anything BTS. You have to burn every single album. You'd have to erase it from people's brains, because I don't believe... I think the harm that BTS has caused humanity is incalculable. Another band I would mention as well is Imagine Dragons. It's just awful garbage. Of course, it's New World Order. But yeah, that's my list pretty much. I know I probably... Oh yeah, there's one band I forgot. Wow, they were kind of like... It was like... I had this big list here, and I figured, I'm only going to do about 20 bands. But then I can't leave these ones out. I can't leave that out. Can't leave that out. And then I had this one band that I had to sneak in, so I put it in between, so it's like usually there's a space in between, but that's why I didn't catch them when I was checking my list here. And I think if you're thinking like this is the band that if you want to commit suicide, or if maybe you've never had a thought of suicide in your life, maybe you're just a happy person, and you hear this band, you'll want to kill yourself. One of the worst bands that has ever been subjected to human ears is Evanescence. I can't even tell you how awful that is. I just thinking of the absolute misery. It's like torture. It's ear torture. That's what it is, and it's from our control. There's no question about it. It's here to just make you just feel absolutely soulless and hopeless, and that's Evanescence. I can't. And there's probably a gazillion more. I can say I'm fortunate. I don't have to ever listen to popular music, and if I hear it, I try to clear it out instantly. But I used to be forced to it. I was working jobs, and there's nothing worse. And to me, it's torture. Like, if I do find the lead singer of Creed, it'll be hard because I owe him something, for sure. As I owe a lot of these people, because they need to feel the misery that they inflict upon people. I mean, when you're forced, to me, it's absolute torture too, to be working someplace and having to listen to a lot of this crap is absolute torture. I believe it's torture. And in fact, it is torture. In fact, they use music as torture all the time, by the way. The American military has been using music as torture for decades. Right? Just blasting music. Guantanamo Bay is an example, right? They'll blast Black Sabbath, or they'll blast all kinds of music. I mean, you'd probably say, well, at least they're blasting hard rock or heavy metal or something like that. Imagine if they were blasting Evanescence. I mean, if they really want to torture people, they put on Nickelback and just blast it. Could you imagine, though? They might do that, though, in the future. They might just say, well, you know what? Everything that we've done hasn't worked, so it's time to force everyone to listen to Nickelback, right? And then they just turn off the speakers. First you hear the purge. You hear the siren. Then all of a sudden Chad Kroeger comes on. And it's game over, right, at that point, when they're blasting Nickelback from everywhere. They got the helicopters up in the sky blasting. But that would make all the soldiers go crazy as well, too, wouldn't it? Wow. Anyways, yeah, there's a lot of awful music out there, and I'm sure you have your most hated bands of all time. This is very personal for me, and I know I'm going to regret not remembering putting a bunch of bands. I'm going to follow up, if this is successful, with my most hated songs of all time in the future. And I like to do this, and again, it's a break from all the madness that's going on, so that's what I'm trying to do with Supreme Lord Commander. So I hope you did get something out of the video. I'd really like to hear your comments on it. I'd like to hear what your most hated bands are. What are your favorite bands? What are the most hated bands? What are bands that maybe at some point you listened to but you realized were absolutely awful, or you actually listened to at one point but now you realize are absolute crap? Leave them in the comments. I want to hear about it. And yeah, did you like this discussion? Do you want to hear more of these things? It is a break. This is not that's why it's not on the main channel, so it's a different sort of thing. But yeah, I wanted to do something like this for quite some time, and I'm happy to get that out. I owe most of these bands some hurt, right? Like, they deserve to suffer because I've had to suffer through them. Do you think it's fair that we have to suffer? Do you think it's fair, if you're a worker, that you're going to be forced to listen to Evanescence or Matchbox 20 or Counting Crows or Our Lady Peace or Limp Bizkit or Foreigner, right? Or Black Eyed Peas, or like, do you think it's do you think that you deserve compensation for being forced to listen to such agonizing, awful? And how much of this music is purposely awful? That's a very important point to make, because I do believe that they are. I do believe that the music industry is using satanic measures to hurt people. And Marilyn Manson is a great example. Nobody on planet Earth should ever listen to something like that. But yet people do, and people are fans. And what does that do? Well, it leads to body piercing and self-mutilation and Satanism and cultish worship and all these things. So these things can be really awful for people, not just the music, but the sort of cultish sort of followings that follow these bands and then emulate the behaviors. So what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think about bands like huge bands like Kiss? I mean, are you a fan, or would you come and say, no, I think you're being a bit too harsh? Or would you put other bands? Would you put the Eagles up on the worst bands of all time? Right? A lot of people hate the Eagles. Some people hate the Beatles, which I can't really understand. But yeah, sometimes it's just, you hear if you're hearing the certain songs that drive you nuts, sort of thing, that could lead you to that. But what do you think? Which bands? What really big bands, for instance, would you put U2? Would you say, oh, you're just, they're not that bad? Come on. Would you put Coldplay? Would you put, Smashing Pumpkins, for instance? Or do you find that I'm not being fair? Maybe I have to give some of these bands a second chance. I want to hear about it. because it's cool to have these discussions and these opinions. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the worst bands of all time. Do you agree with my list? Do you agree with all of it or some of it? What do you disagree with? What do you agree with? Leave in the comments, if you can, all these things, and post list, if you want, of the worst bands of all time. You can rank them. You can do whatever. I'll definitely read all your lists and check everything out. And I like doing these discussions. In fact, I discuss this type of stuff often on the Bone Broth on Fridays on the main channel, Jeff Censored. So if you like this type of discussion, tune in on late Friday, early Saturday morning, usually around midnight or so on a Friday. I start to talk with the audience, and we talk about rock and roll, music, animals, all kinds of food, all these things, right? We try to have, because I purposely try to take a break at that point and hopefully set the weekend off to the right kind of start for a lot of people. But yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, and looking forward to it. Also, a reminder, if you can, come and support me. My Patreon link's in the description. That really, really is the only way that I can get financially compensated, because they don't allow ads or anything on my videos. So if you do like my work, please try to come and support me on Patreon. Link's in the description. Give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and hit the bell. And what do you think? Do you think this is a good direction for Supreme Lord Commander to go in the future? Maybe it's a way of getting some normies, normal people, maybe get some of those people coming in. And I don't want to insult those people, but, maybe they'll click on the video and they'll listen and they'll like what's being said, and they'll be like, yeah, maybe I'll listen to more of this guy, and they'll come and check out my normal stuff, right, where I discuss all the crazy stuff that's going on. And yeah, if you are somebody, you're only subscribed to Supreme Lord Commander, that's not even my main channel. It's Jeff Censored, so please go check out Jeff Censored. It's pretty heavy what I talk about there. But I do want to keep Supreme Lord Commander as more of a fun place and a more, discussing things like this. So in the future, I'll be discussing movies, and I have over the years as well. More music, arts, all these things. Because, yeah, I love music. I love art. I love, movies. I love things that I believe are good and, real and all that. So, yeah. Anyways, thanks so much for sticking around, and I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in this world. Much love. See you on the next one.